Good afternoon and welcome to webinar number 3 in our Star2M webinar series. Today's focus is on maintenance, and we're going to walk the audience through how we can better utilise Star2M to maintain your assets in Star2M. My name is Michael Walker and I'm the Head of Global Sales, Marketing and Digital here at Star2M Sealight and Avlight. Joining me today will be my colleagues. I'd first like to introduce Mr. Wade Evans. Wade is our Product, Project and Solution Manager for our aviation and digital portfolios within our business. Joining Wade today is Ms. Priyanka Naidu. Priyanka is our Technical Coordinator across the aviation and digital portfolios. We thank you for joining us and taking the time today. We hope now to continue this series as we dive a little bit deeper into Star2M and its features and functionality, with today's focus being around maintenance. For those that are not familiar and joining us for the first time, we've got the webinar series shown there on the screen. In terms of identifying a little bit more information around the speakers, you can view those options up under the tab at the top of your screen, and then feel free to capture any questions using the Q&A dialog box throughout the webinar. We will hold questions back to the end, as is our routine, and then we'll seek to answer those questions at the back end of today's session. So just a short introduction in terms of who is Star2M and what is Star2M. Star2M is a business venture, and it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the Sealight Proprietary Limited group of companies. And essentially, it was created to act as our exclusive telecommunications provider across the Sealight Marine and Avlight aviation product lines. And essentially, it is our new cloud-based enterprise software solution. For those not familiar, Star2M represents satellite-to-machine communication or machine-to-machine monitoring control. And in terms of those industry trends and themes, without a shadow of a doubt, that need for reliable monitoring, connectivity, control of assets has been at the forefront of the development of this piece of software. And then secondly, that need for digital asset management, which continues to increase as we talk to customers and get across the industry. And that's where we're going to focus a little bit today, around asset management and driving deeper into maintenance. A quick system overview, if you will. There's a number of elements to the model. The first certainly starts with the hardware, and it's about the device, the fixture. For our aviation customers, that might be an obstruction light, or it might be a remote integrated helipad system. For those that are familiar with our marine portfolio, it might be a deployed marine lantern on a floating aid offshore. It might be a shore beacon, a shore lighthouse, etc. So the first core element, it's about connectivity, connecting the hardware. Our focus is around satellite telemetry. We still capture the cellular, but as we've scoured the industry, we identified Iridium as being really the world's only truly global satellite communications company that was able to provide that assured coverage and meet all of our needs and those needs of our customers. So satellite is our preferred methodology or modem. We're also offering the cellular there. And then third, with the evolution of the portfolio and looking at other complementary technologies, on that roadmap is the Internet of Things. The second is then, once you've got your hardware, if you will, the next piece is then around the platform or the portal. So it's a completely self-contained portal. It's utilising one or a number of feature sets, be that asset management, asset monitoring, asset control, asset maintenance, and it's a flexible modular system architecture. And then finally, it's truly user and business centric. So the flexibility of the commercial model allows users to be able to configure down to a single given asset. You have the flexibility to choose what assets are in scope. And then in terms of the system, if you will, or the tool, it really doesn't recognize individual vendors or manufacturers. So we're incredibly proud that this system can work really manufacturer agnostic. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the system. And what I thought I'd do today at this juncture, given webinar number 2 was a focus on asset management and today's focus is on asset maintenance, I thought I'd just spend a few little moments just discussing in greater detail this function or this industry that is asset management. For those not familiar, asset management essentially is a coordinated set of activities of an organisation to realise value from his or her assets. The key word there is around realizing value. In terms of the selection of hardware or technology, it's obviously got to serve a critical function, be that an aviation or a marine aid, but essentially it's about deriving value over the lifetime of that asset. So asset management typically takes a longer term view, and the key elements or the constituent elements is really all about performance, cost and risk. And in our vocabulary, when we talk about performance, it's really about availability, service availability. Is that particular lantern or light on station, powered and functioning as it is intended? The final piece there is around asset management, really is an integral part of other business systems, functions and processes. So it's important that your asset management system or solution does integrate across those other elements of an organisation. What goes hand in hand with asset management is this concept of risk management. Risk management, by definition, is simply a coordinated activity to direct and control an organisation with regard to risk. Typically, it's more of a defensive posture, and the goal there is about minimising risk or reducing consequence. The text there I've captured is preventative. How can we prevent risk? And ultimately, good, healthy, sound risk management should underpin all business operations. The final piece there is essentially asset management is risk management at its core. So when we talk about asset management, we talk about distributed fixed assets, understanding where they are in their life cycle, being able to monitor and understand their health or their condition, being able to then overlay that with a maintenance schedule. What we're ultimately managing or trying to optimize is risk management. In terms of a future state or a little bit of an altruistic state, there's this new concept that's emerging within the asset management space called resilient asset management. I won't drill into that in too much detail, but essentially there's a number of building blocks, and those constituent elements is first and foremost understanding your assets, building knowledge of your assets, and once you've got that as a foundation, it's then about building capability. Capability within your maintenance schedule, whether or not you're optimizing preventative versus break-fix maintenance, and ultimately it's about building resilience, building a more resilient network of assets. Tying back to that previous slide, organisational asset management as a function is really, really important. So for those of us on today's call and joining us that are looking after assets, be that asset manager, some of you might be asset maintainers, this will be really familiar turf for you. The key is about controlling risk. And when we loop that back to that in financial investment, when we control risk, we're able to extract value from our assets. And ultimately, this is one of those critical functions of asset management. It's why we exist within our organisations. How do we achieve this? Well, the key, what we see from a Star2M perspective, is an ability to link our people with our processes, with our systems to that asset network. And Star2M can play a role, a significant role where it is that system, or secondly, it can form part of a larger asset management system. So we talk about it being a system of systems. So if you're already operating a very large asset management tool such as SAP or Oracle, Star2M has a role to play within that system. The final piece that I'll conclude before I hand over to Wade is around tying in maintenance, which is today's focus. Coming back to those core issues for any asset manager or asset management system, it's about availability and service availability. We need to manage cost, we need to manage risk. And so now as we introduce maintenance over the top of that, and as depicted in that diagram on the right-hand side of the slide, we can see there on the left-hand margin, we've got cost. And so when we're doing our preventative maintenance, we have an increased cost. If we're doing no maintenance at all, or we're doing simply reactive maintenance, we have a very high repair cost. But the goal is to optimize. So we're trying to manage our risk. We're trying to manage cost within the realities of our finite budgets. And we're looking for that optimum spot, that sweet spot around maintenance. And the key there is that asset maintenance is a key tool for asset managers to help them optimize their operations and ultimately maintain system availability. And that's today sets the scene for our Star2M module, where we now dive a little deeper into asset maintenance and start to flesh out the system. I'd now like to introduce Wade Evans. Thanks, Wade.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. So as Mike mentioned, Star2M can really add to the value add of any asset management activity or asset management operations by really enhancing the asset maintenance portfolio. So what that allows us to do is really provide a couple of feature sets that are specifically aimed at asset management or asset maintenance, sorry, as well as enhancing some of the existing feature sets we covered in previous webinars. So I'll go through each of those individual feature sets independently, and then we'll actually demonstrate those live within the portal itself to show how to utilize these various feature sets to achieve that asset maintenance value add that's absolutely critical for most organizations. So the first feature set is really being able to provide asset insights to assist with proactive maintenance via asset data logging. So what we're talking about there is a couple of key criteria. Predominantly that's around being able to generate a graphical display of the asset variables. These are the electrical characteristics of a given asset, any of the key monitoring capabilities of a given asset. That's all mapped and captured within Star2M. And that allows you to do some predictive assessments. It allows you to look at how that asset is performing holistically, look at the health of that asset, and then make maintenance decisions based on that asset state. Obviously, that's then backed up by our ability to then capture all that information historically, able to log that information and maintain that within the system, allowing you to assess it and interrogate it at a later date, allowing you to really get an overview of how that asset has performed over time, and then critically be able to make proactive asset decisions. So what that means is these two components all wrapped up allow you to really generate preventative maintenance activities, allows you to really be proactive rather than purely reactive once a fault occurs. Following on from that, we start looking at asset-based maintenance management. So what that means, it's a little bit involved, but ultimately what it means is that you're able to create very specific maintenance criteria for each given asset type. That allows you to configure these based on your organizational needs, your specific field needs, or your specific maintenance operation needs. You can configure these maintenance parameters for a given maintenance asset type, and then take those parameters and modify them, edit them, and keep them updated for those given assets to give you a full maintenance picture of that asset itself. But we'll delve into that a little bit further as we do the live demo. Following on from this, we start hitting into our field component of what asset maintenance really is. So ultimately, being able to generate field-based maintenance reporting is absolutely critical, and we do that through utilizing our Star2M application, which is available on iOS and Android. And this syncs up into the Star2M portal to allow you to have a holistic maintenance approach. So the Star2M app allows you to generate those maintenance reports for each individual given asset. It allows you to do it in the field. That's how we utilize the Star2M app predominantly. You can then capture the overall asset health of those given assets when you're viewing them in field. And then you can capture any maintenance performed tasks as well. So all that wraps up as a specific maintenance activity on an asset in the field. And those can then be synchronized up to the portal as well, which moves on to the next point. So taking individual maintenance reports is absolutely crucial, but then being able to dictate trends based on those overarching maintenance activities is absolutely critical as well. So the other feature set that Star2M provides is that centralized maintenance logging capability. So that allows you to synchronize all of these individual maintenance reports. They synchronize up to Star2M itself, and then that gives you an audit log of those maintenance activities. You can then correlate those audit logs with states and health statuses of the individual assets to make sure the asset is performing how you expect it to do. And if it's not, you can then make proactive decisions on how to maintain, modify, or update that given asset. So that's a high-level overview of the different feature sets that we do for asset maintenance inside Star2M, but we'll get into more detail as we actually demonstrate those live within the portal itself. So we'll just jump over to the portal. Fantastic. So here we are inside the Star2M portal, inside our demo account for the Star2M portal. And this is actually viewing a specific asset as we stand now. So I'll jump back to the start to show you exactly how we get to this asset and how we get to this information profile. So what we're looking at is the Star2M AusSat Lantern White 01. And when you look into the actual icon over here on the right that I've shown, if you delve into that icon, you'll then be able to look at all the data reports for that specific asset. So these are the details for the asset, which we covered in a previous webinar. But where you really start being able to capture maintenance information is when you start looking at the data updates themselves. So this is where you present the actual graphical user interface. It allows you to show all that asset data mapped graphically, which allows you to make some decisions and get some insights into how that asset is functioning. And then additionally, all the information is correlated in the table below, which can be exported. So the key parameters we really monitor for any given asset, any monitored asset as it stands, is there's 4 key parameters: max voltage, min voltage, which are those 2 lines there I've just shown. We've got daily load, which is how much the asset is consuming. And the final one is charge current. So there's a few things you can find out from these different parameters. First and foremost, min and max voltage should always be maintained at a given level. You're looking for straight lines here. You're expecting that the fixture itself is discharging its power source in the same way, especially if it's a battery. You expect it to always be maintaining the same minimum maximum voltage over a given time period. If you see large fluctuations in either of those values, either your lantern is starting to discharge the battery more if your minimum voltage is starting to decrease, or you're starting to get high fluctuations in your maximum voltage, also indicate there's something wrong within the power source or the battery in this condition. So keeping an eye on those parameters is important. They're typically steady state, they're typically straight lines, but if they're not, you can start to make some maintenance decisions about mobilizing your operations, mobilizing your maintenance staff in order to actually start looking at this asset in the field and doing some further diagnostics. The next part we want to look at is around the daily load. So the daily load is how much is consumed by that asset, how much current is consumed by that asset over the 24-hour period. So you expect that to then be quite consistent unless there's been a configuration change to that asset. Now, configuration change happen, you may change the flash code, increase the intensity to increase the range. And if you do, you expect to see a direct correlation with that change in the data that's being reported by that unit. Now, if it's an explainable correlation, you don't need to mobilize a maintenance activity. But if it's not explainable and the load starts to peak without a correlated configuration change, then something has changed within the system. And that's when you need to start looking further into your maintenance program and start to get those insights out of this data. And finally, we start looking at charge current. So charge current is how much charge is actually absorbed from the solar panels for any of our self-contained fixtures or any monitored self-contained fixture as it was. And that can really give you a lot of insights into how the fixture is performing. You expect to see some fluctuations there. Obviously, it's based on weather cycles, seasonal changes. But also, if you start to see a lot of, a trend down of the total average of the charge current, it can really lead to some important information, being things like bird fouling, for example. If you have a high level of bird fouling, you'd expect that charge current to completely decrease on an average level, and then you can start ramping up your maintenance activities to actually rectify that issue before it becomes a critical fault and you start hitting low battery conditions, where you actually have to start recovering your battery, even having to replace them if you let it go far enough. So it's important to look at this information, but it can also provide some really value-added insights if you know what you're looking at, and then correlate that over time. So obviously you can scale back through the time period here, which we've shown previously, but you can then also see when there's direct correlation between things. So in this case, obviously you can see a direct correlation between increase in load and increase in charge current. Now, that can be for a couple of reasons. In this case, it's because we actually increased the intensity of this unit to do a test and increase the intensity over time, which increased the load. But at the same time, you may see a correlation in various parameters that can either be valid or non-valid. And if it's not valid, that's when you start ramping up maintenance activities. Obviously, all this data is then captured in raw format down below, which can be exported to Excel and then assessed independently or over a much larger period of time than you can see graphically here in one snapshot. So that's how you utilize this information to do maintenance activities. On top of that, we'll now look at how you do maintenance specific parameters for a given asset. So we jump back to assets. Clear this. Page 1. Asset maintenance webinar. So here's a specific asset we've created for this webinar to demonstrate how you can apply maintenance specific parameters to a given asset. Now, if I open this one up, you'll see we have all the standard information that's captured on an asset, but we also have some very specific maintenance parameters that we've customized and added ourselves. So here we've added the major maintenance interval being a 3-month period, the minor maintenance interval being 4 weeks, the average major maintenance time period being 2 hours, and the average minor maintenance time being 30 minutes. The major maintenance activity consists of a battery replacement, light head repairs, and the minor maintenance activity, physical inspection for damage and water ingress, and some lens cleaning as well. So that's all possible to create. This isn't standardized in any way. You can create and customize this as you grow or as you build out your maintenance requirements for a specific asset. You can also cater it to any specific operational requirements or maintenance requirements given your asset type. So this can scale as far and as big as you need it to, and it allows you to really cater those specific assets to capture all that really important maintenance information. So actually creating this is a straightforward process that I'll show you in a moment, and you do that through the asset generator. So if you go into asset generator here, which we've covered in a previous webinar, if you go over to asset type, you can then look, we've created Marine Lantern Webinar, which is the asset type we've created to demonstrate this. And if you go to the edit icon and over to custom fields, you'll see that we've created a series of custom fields down here at the bottom, which are all related to the maintenance activities for that asset type. You can create as many asset types as you need to, and every asset type is obviously going to have different maintenance requirements. They can all be populated based on the specific asset, but then the parameters themselves are grouped to the asset type. As I said, you can expand this as far as you need to, you can reduce it down. It's all configurable and it's all customizable. All these parameters can also be edited in the field through the app. So if you have a specific, say you wanted to modify the major maintenance time based on the maintenance assessment, and you want to increase or decrease that, you can also do that in the field. And this is also supported by our maintenance reporting functionality, which we'll also go through in a moment. So that's a high level overview of those two feature sets. I'll now hand over to Priyanka to go through the maintenance reporting functionality and the audit log for the maintenance reporting as well.
Thanks, Wade. Hi, everyone. So as Wade said, I will be running through the process of creating one of these in-field maintenance reports for an asset using the Star2M app. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen. And at this point, if you are viewing the webinar through a mobile device, you may just want to zoom in a bit just so you can see the screen a bit more clearly. Great. So as you can see here, I've already logged into the Star2M application here, and I've gone directly to the assets page via the main menu here. So what I'm going to do now is select one of the marine lanterns to generate this report for. Let's select the one we looked at before. And I'm going to select the reports tab. Now this shows you a list of all of the maintenance reports that have already been created for this particular asset in chronological order. Now to go ahead and generate a new maintenance report, I'm going to select Create New Report there in bold. And that's going to open up a maintenance report template that you can then go through and fill in as you're servicing the asset. So just by looking at the top of the first page there, you can enter in the name of the report. I'm just going to call it webinar. You can also select whether this report type is scheduled or incident. For this example, let's keep it as scheduled. And you can also select the time of the service. You can pick any day or time. I'll just keep it to what it is at the moment. And what you can also do is attach any associated photos and videos of the asset before any servicing has been done, just to capture the current state of the asset. So you can do that here by either selecting camera, where you'll be able to take photos or videos directly within the report here, or you can just upload a previously saved photo or video from your gallery here. So I'm just going to swipe over to the next page. And the information here you see here relates to the initial condition of the asset. So you can just go through each of the sections here and select from the drop-down menu here. So you can select the overall condition of the asset, any damage or vandalism, the severity of any marine growth. I'm just going to select minor for this example. as well as any bird fouling. Let's select minor as well. What you can also go ahead and do is just add in any additional notes as well. I'm just going to add in good condition here. And I'm just going to swipe over to the next page. So the information you see here relates to the particular asset type. So for this particular asset, the asset type is a marine lantern. So you can just scroll through and fill in the sections as you see here. But if this asset was a marine buoy, for example, or a pylon or a battery instead, then the information you'd see here would be quite different. So once you've gone ahead and selected everything in this page, just swipe over to the next page. And the information shown here relates to the maintenance activities performed for the asset. So here you can select whether cleaning has been completed or whether it's incomplete or not required at all. I'm just going to select completed. You can also specify any hardware that's been replaced. For example, I'm just going to say battery replaced. You can also specify any follow-up actions required. So for example, a follow-up action may be to come back and check the solar charging performance. And you can also specify when this follow-up action is required by. So let's just say for this example, exactly 1 month from now. You can also specify the current status of the service, whether it's been completed, not completed, or whether a return visit is required. So I'm just going to select complete there. More importantly, you can also select when the next service is due. So for this example, let's just select exactly 3 months from now. And then just swiping over to the last page there, you can also attach any photos and videos of the asset once it's been serviced through the gallery and camera again. So at this point, you can either save the report as a draft and come back to it later, or you can go ahead and submit it. So I'm going to submit it and press OK. And once you do that, you can see that the report is added to the list here. You can then go back and open it and view the details that you've entered, which you can see are now grayed out because you can't go back and make any changes to the report once it's been submitted, just to keep everything consistent so that nothing's changed by accident. More importantly, submitted reports are also synchronized to the Star2M web portal, where they can be viewed against a particular asset. So if we now move back over to the web portal, I'll just show you what that looks like. It may take a few seconds just to load. Great. So similar to what I did within the app, I'm going to select the asset that I created the report for. Let's search for it. This one here. I'm going to select the asset details and go to the reports tab. And once I do that, you can see if you have a look at the first entry there, that's the report that I just uploaded from the Star2M application. Now, if you go ahead and open it, you're able to easily scroll through and have a look at what information was entered in there. So if I go ahead and close this, what you're left with here is a list of all of the maintenance reports that have been created for this particular asset. So this is combined to make up what is essentially a centralized historical audit log of all the maintenance activities that have been performed for this particular asset. So just going through the list here, you're able to determine exactly when a particular service was completed. And then by interrogating a report further, for example, this one, you can easily scroll through and have a look at what was changed, what was inspected, what was cleaned, what was replaced. And in addition, you can also have a look at what future maintenance activities need to be planned. As I said before, any images can be attached here, which will be opened in a separate tab. Great. So as Wade mentioned before, you can also use the information entered in a maintenance report to correlate that back to your asset performance data. So for this example, you can see that the asset itself was, the position was changed to be in an area of better sunlight. So you would expect your charge current, for example, to increase after the service. So in essence, you can see that the system allows you to build and maintain a single schedule that's managed from a centralized location for everyone. And that's especially helpful when you're coordinating maintenance activities, when you have multiple engineers and technicians that are going to service your asset. So that concludes the asset maintenance overview. I'll now hand back over to Wade to go through what's coming up next for Star2M.
Thanks, Priyanka. So in terms of what's coming next for Star2M, we've got a few developments coming through. So most importantly, on the short-term roadmap, we're talking about Star2M release 2.0, which is coming in late 2020 this year. That's going to contain some really critical geographical information updates where we're using Esri mapping to build up our mapping engine. On top of that, there's obviously the roles and associations, which we've spoken about in the last couple of webinars as well, which allows you to build and cater your user management to very specific roles and associations, allowing greater control over who can access what, how and why. Obviously, we also have opportunities for partners and resellers to sell Star2M. If you're interested, please contact your local sales representative. And on top of that, we have new products as well to enable existing assets to connect into Star2M, which is part of our connected product portfolio that allows us to really roll out Star2M and allows users to be able to pull in additional product into the Star2M ecosystem. Now I'll just hand over to Mike to wrap us up.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Priyanka. That was excellent. We'll now just move through to the Q&A section of today's agenda, where we'll now attempt to provide answers to those questions. So the first question we've received is, can the system work with other lantern brands? The short answer is yes. Star2M, as I mentioned at the opening, is an agnostic system, and essentially you're able to configure any type of lantern or light or particular asset with its own discrete criteria. So the short answer is yes, the system is agnostic and it's not brand dependent. Thanks for the question. The next question is the maintenance report field created in the app or on the Star2M platform? I'll invite you, Wade.
Yeah, so in terms of the maintenance fields, the specific maintenance fields, as we customize those maintenance fields that I demonstrated, that's created within the portal, but it's accessible via the app, as where the app itself really just populates that information. So the maintenance reports have some common criteria on them, but then you can also modify through editing the asset specifically, rather than generating a maintenance report. You can edit the asset and modify any of those primary maintenance parameters. But they're all generated in the portal. That's the powerhouse of the system in order to be able to customize and build all that customization. But it's generated on the portal and then accessible via the app.
Thank you, Wade. The next question is an excellent one. It's a large current user, and the attendee has asked, we have 157 assets, of which approximately 108 are GSM fitted, and therefore the maintenance inspection reports and photographs can be uploaded to Star2M at the time of servicing. The question is, with our non-GSM assets, we would like to have an easy manual upload of reports. Is this possible? I'll invite you in again, Wade.
Yeah, so at the moment you can generate those, you would be able to generate those manual reports against a non-monitored asset through the Star2M app as well. So you could go through and generate specific maintenance reports, even though it's not a monitored fixture itself. Obviously, we're building and expanding our maintenance capabilities, and maintenance is a key focus area for us in terms of our development. So as we move forwards, we'll be looking at being able to generate maintenance reports independently within the portal itself. to be able to, say, mass upload large maintenance reports, or be able to generate specific discrete maintenance reports within the portal, rather than discreetly via the app. But you can do it via the app at the moment. There's just some added efficiencies and optimizations that we're looking forward to.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. And I'd add to that, again, the system is not dependent on being a connected device. Users are free to add any number or type of assets of their choosing into their subscription. Thank you, Wade. The next question is, when will you be able to enter maintenance reports through the web portal rather than just the app? That's a roadmap question, Wade. I'll invite you to provide an answer.
Yeah, so as we just spoke about, it's not currently possible. It won't be in 2.0 at this stage. However, it's certainly something we're looking at for subsequent releases from there. And that'll allow us, it might be only a minor release post 2.0, but in terms of roadmap, it's certainly something we're looking at. But once we have further details, we'll be able to sort of go out to the market and let you know.
Yeah, thank you, Wade. It's a really good question, and it's something that is top of mind for us in terms of our development. The next question that's come in is, can assets owned by multiple owners be controlled by a single user? Wade, would you like to provide a response?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one in terms of asset owned by multiple people through a single user. Obviously, the asset needs to belong to a specific account, a specific Star2M account. What you can do is then provide multiple access into that account by anyone who has access or ownership of that asset. So what that allows you to do is, yes, you may have a specific account that owns the asset or a specific account that holds the asset, but then you have multiple access methods into that asset specifically. Alternatively, you can also utilize the API to push that information in multiple different directions as well, if the communication method between different owners is through different systems as well.
Thank you, Wade. I'll invite Priyanka in to respond to this next question. And the question is, will the system remind me ahead of time of a scheduled maintenance visit?
Sure. Well, at the moment, the time of the next scheduled maintenance visit is only recorded in the maintenance report, but as we expand our maintenance capabilities, we could actually be able to send out customized notifications by email, for example, to let you know ahead of time.
Yeah, thanks, Priyanka. And that certainly forms part of that, that ability to connect the maintenance report functionality into the portal that Wade touched on in R3. The next question is, can we use our own local GSM SIM card instead of the satellite function? Priyanka or Wade, would you like to provide an answer?
Yeah, sure, I'll jump in. So yes, obviously we support GSM and satellite. It's not exclusively a satellite platform. So we support both telemetry mechanisms. You just obviously need the hardware to support the appropriate telemetry method. So if you've got a satellite enabled fixture, then it's obviously only going to work over the satellite network. If you've got a GSM enabled fixture, then you'll be able to utilize your own local SIM card on that GSM device to then report into Star2M.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is an excellent question, and it's actually a nice segue into webinar number 4, which we'll touch on in a moment. And the question is, in terms of confidentiality, who may have access to the data kept at the Sealite servers? Would you like to respond to that, Wade? And then just touch on webinar number 4 that's coming up?
Yeah, so ultimately data security is a huge part of Star2M and everything that we look at. Obviously, privacy rules, but data security first and foremost as well. And ultimately, no one can access that data. So the data is fully encrypted. We can't actually access it ourselves within the Star2M team. We can't actually access the data since it's so encrypted. Ultimately, the owner of the data is the person who owns the account. So unless we have the account credentials to access the specific Star2M account, you can't actually decrypt any of the information. So it's completely secure. We're obviously working towards extensive ISO certification as well for all of our systems, but a lot of our customers already utilize quite extensive IT requirements, and we're compliant to all those as well. So ultimately, state-of-the-art encryption forms the backbone of our security mechanisms, and then we have all the inbuilt redundancies and protections as well.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. And just to build on that, I guess one of the core values of Star2M is trust. So it's critically important that our customers have trust in us as an organisation, but most importantly in the system. And so without a shadow of a doubt, total encryption of the data, we have no access. We're unable, if a user was mistakenly deleted an asset, unfortunately there is no recovery. It is absolutely critical that everybody on today's call and those watching on playback understand that security and data integrity remains at the core of Star2M. And so leading on to webinar number 4, coming in a number of weeks, we're going to get a little bit more technical as we start to discuss the methodology, the architecture, the security, the encryption, and we're also going to feature a keynote speaker from Iridium who'll also be able to bring to life the satellite network that they're so proud of operating and maintaining. I've got another question that's just come in. Will there ever be storage of historical data once a light is replaced? I guess just to tease that out, Wade, I'll invite you to respond, but I guess it's a really good question, but I think it really hinges around if a light remains an asset and it's in service, or whether it's actually deleted and retired from the system. So I'll invite you, Wade, to expand on that, please.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So ultimately, it comes down to how you manage your asset base. So if you have a specific light that's replaced because it's no longer operational, it's faulty and needs to be holistically replaced, operationally or process-wise, you're actually taking that asset and then placing it out of service. Now, if that's completely retired and you want to maintain all the historical data, you need to maintain that as an out-of-service asset. Now, if you try to take that specific asset and wholesale replace it with another asset, obviously, historically, those two asset histories are no longer aligned. If you've got a brand new device, it's no longer part of that asset history because it has its own asset history. It's got its own asset identification. So ultimately, you create a new asset with its own, starting asset history, its own maintenance program, its own maintenance lifecycle, and all of its own reported data. And then that would occupy the same physical position on the same asset group, but it would be its own unique asset. And if you keep it that way, if you manage your assets in that way, where they're specifically all the reports and all the information and all the IDs follow the asset rather than the physical position, then you'll be able to always have your historical data. If you do decide you want to replace and override specific assets, then you're going to lose all that data and all that data integrity because it needs to be housed in a database against a specific ID.
Thanks, Wade. And I'll just expand on that. It's important that our audience understands that there's no limitation on data size or file size, and for the life of that active asset, all data recorded against that asset will be maintained in the system. But subsequent to the previous question, if a user does wish to delete, aka retire an asset from the system, they'd need to ensure that they've downloaded their data and their maintenance reports prior to deleting that asset. For once it is deleted, there is no backdoor, there's no save search. That data must be deleted in accordance with our privacy and data management protocols. Thanks for the question. It was an excellent one. The final question that's come in is, are there any limitations around size or file storage? And the short answer is no. So users are able to log as many videos or photos or as many maintenance reports or data sets as they feel is necessary for their successful operations against that asset, and that data will be stored securely and encrypted for the lifetime of the asset. That concludes today's session. I'd like to give a great thanks to my co-presenters Wade Evans and also Priyanka Naidu, and my support team back in the bunker who makes all of these webinars possible. We really are absolutely proud to bring these sessions to you in this time. And I'd also like to now thank all of our delegates and attendees who've taken the time to join today for this 45-minute webinar. For those not familiar, all of these webinars and the previous webinars can be located on star2m.com/resource in our resource centre. We invite you to watch those back on playback or share them with other colleagues and members from your organisations. And finally, I'd like to invite you all to take part in a short 60-second survey. That really helps us. It's really powerful to be able to get your feedback to continue to be able to optimise these sessions and these events to make sure that they're meaningful and that we're covering the information that will help you evolve and better manage your operations. With that, we give thanks, and I'll see you at our next webinar. Thank you.